Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Now everything's painted, it starts the reassembly process. I'm going to show you how I put the buffers on, all of the new stops, and the little trunnions on the bottom of the Kingpin, and also the Kingpin itself, and then setting our drag and shims thickness. And then I'm going to show you the way I take the pin out if I'm torquing up and it gets too stiff and you have to remove it and change the shim. That can be an issue with some, especially if it's still on the car. It's going to be a real bear. You have to obviously neutralize the spring. Because we haven't got any springs in right now, it makes it a lot easier. I'm going to get my drag to what I like and the torque to what I want, and then we're going to install the springs after that, and probably check it, you know, after 1,000 miles or so, and then re-grease everything, make sure everything's right. So let's get started. What we're going to do, we're going to get this upper control arm. Make sure that these the correct ones, because as you know, these sleeve nuts here, or yeah, not nuts, bolt shafts with an inner thread are different on each side. So right, what I'm going to do is run them in with the impact in and out on low. This is not on high power, so we'll just make sure. Right, they go in both sides, and obviously you're going to scratch and nick stuff, you know, so you can come in later and just do some touch up. Don't worry too much about that. So let's get these in. Don't overdo it. Oops. That's it, just so it stops. Right, set that one over there. We'll do this top one first. Okay, obviously the ones with the grease nipples on the ends go to the upper control arm. So, right, what we got to do. So don't forget your seals. That would be a bit rotten, wouldn't it? Actually, get it all back together and forgetting the seals. So, 2 per bar essentially. I've got a little bit of grease here. I'm not going to overload it, because before this goes into service I'm going to grease everything and get a generous amount of grease in the whole thing. So I'm just putting a little on here just to get it started. Just get one started there. Now obviously we got to torque all these to the correct torque. I will go over that. I've just got to review the book, make sure that they're torqued correctly. Just nip those up. Don't go mad. As I say, we'll check those in a bit. Now what we can do now, we can centralize, make sure this is, obviously it's got to be orientated that way to go on to the job. So I'm just going to measure from the frame over to the center of the holes here. Make sure the seals are all good. So this one's ready to mount onto the frame. See, look, that one's slopping around there, you see. That's got to go that side. And they are actually stamped. It says 31 on the frame there. So I think it's stamped this side. No, it's just stamped one side. So they're all ready to rock and roll. Just as a matter of information, I bought all the seals from MB Classics in Germany, and the buffers, and all the 4 upper buffers for the upper control arms as well, and so all of the Zerk fittings. I just bought 10 of them, of each, the straight ones and the angled ones, so we've got plenty of them. As I say, don't worry too much about nicking stuff. Well, I'm not. I mean, some of you guys that have powder coated stuff, you're obviously going to take a little more care, but powder coating is obviously that much more durable anyway. But as I say, this is my work car, one that I use all the time. But it'll look nice next to everything else that doesn't. So, okay, so I'll get the seals on there. I did actually score, I don't know whether I told you already, I scored a good second-hand one of these lower control pins, because as you know, one was pretty shot, it was knackered. So these pins with these and the whole shebang can run around $400 each from Mercedes. And as I say, I had some aftermarket ones that I just didn't want to use because these holes were, I think I shot a video of that, these holes weren't the right size and you'd have to put a bushing in them, and I don't know, I just lost confidence in them. So I'm not torquing them down yet, and then we'll get this centralised. I'm happy with that, I think. Getting a little dark out here, so yeah, 1 5/8 from the inside of the frame, not the flange, the frame, to the centre of the hole. So that's all ready to go on the car, on the frame. Right, let me show you how I put these in. Here's a clue. This is wax paper, okay? I bet you don't. I bet you can't guess, or maybe some of you can. This part you should do when the missus is out. The wax paper is so these can go in the oven, and alongside my baked potato that I'm cooking. And you'll know they're done once the house starts to smell like a new tyre showroom. And what I do, I just put a little grease on the leading edge there. A little tiny dab, you don't have to go mental. So over a solid surface, and then I'm just kind of going to roll it and push it at the same time. There you go. Yeah, the wife is not, she's not here today, she's away, so you probably wouldn't get away with this any other time. So, there you go. Install. And yeah, they're not coming out. I mean, they're just, once they cool off, they're obviously gonna get hard in there, and then you're good to go. So that's that unit ready to roll. All right, same thing with the buffers on the top control arm area. I've heated these up. I didn't do that on the other ones. I did it without heating, and it was kind of a bear. So let's see if we can work this in. There you go. That wasn't too bad. Just got to kind of roll it around. And like I say, you can wipe the grease off from the other side. Let's work this one. There you go. That's in. Wiggle it around. Make sure the little flange is engaged there. Because once this control arm and Kingpin are all set in, you're not going to be able to do this. So making sure I've dry fitted this, you know, delicate, making sure the distances are equal, and I just used this edge and this edge against this tower here to make sure it was centered well. So first of all, we've got now these bolts I haven't painted yet because I figure they're going to get manked up as I go to put them on, and I'll just shoot a little paint on top. As I say, this is a work car, so I'm going overboard for a work car really, aren't I? So this is certainly not going to see any shows. So get those there, and then we've got some 2mm spacers that go in between the towers and the bolts here. Yeah, I'm watching this distance here, make sure it's not one way or the other, just make it as centered as you possibly can. So now what we're going to do, we're going to start building out the Kingpin top here, top of the Kingpin first. Okay, get it centered here first, get this anchored off, and then slide in the knuckle afterwards. So let's get the Kingpin and little kit. Let me show you what the kit consists of. Right, this is a Phoebe Bilstein kit. So show you what it comes with. So we got the offset, you know, cam screw thingy, whatever you call this, you know, where it's offset for making camber adjustments, and then the relevant slotted pin here that engages only one way. Then this goes through the top of the Kingpin, and then the locking nut, lock washer. So this is the little knurled edge plate that locks into this to stop it moving. The bolt, the lock nut, spacer washer, and this is for caster angle. So let's get a Kingpin and go about fitting that. So what I'm going to do is pre-fit this bolt in here, okay, and I'm going to put a little anti-seize on this edge here. This never gets any lubricant. Once this goes in, this doesn't get lubricated, this edge. Even when you're greasing the stuff, all the other bits get. So take the opportunity, get a little grease in there, or anti-seize, because there's going to be some residual paint from the painting, so I'm just going to work that. There you go. So we've got to get our star caster adjuster on this side, then the seal, the Kingpin, a seal, a washer, and then this end. Now it gets a little tricky, so let me show you how I go about it. So I've just put the sleeve bolt in here, the thing that this rides through, and then center that. I'll put a little grease on it, but I am going to grease everything and work everything before this goes back in service. This little adjusting key here goes on and engages with the slot in this sliding sleeve here. So essentially when that's rotated, this sleeve goes back and forth in the carriage here to adjust the caster angle. So I forgot to mention that. So that's got to go in there, in that slot with the seal this side. So you'll see this slot cut in this guy. So yeah, I just want to mention that. I'm going to get this guy on here like so. We'll get this in here. I've got to squeeze it a little bit, make sure those seals don't deform. Help that in there. Right, we'll get our pin in, you see. That comes all the way through, so that's alright, that works. Right. Now we've got to get our washer in here. Right, as I say, I'm going to get the washer, that's a better angle for me. So I'm going to get the washer between the control arm and the seal. Work that guy in there. Get it so far, and I'll get a little punch to help me lever it over on this side. Excuse my head. There we go. See, now we're nice and centered with this upper trunnion here. Get that all the way through, and then we've got to put the other guy on there. It's this one with that, there we go, that's this one with that receiving pin in the middle that can only go on one way down the slot of the bolt, and I'm going to put a little anti-seize on that. Done up to pull that on there. Keep it nice and loose. So now you can see You'll be able to see now, you watch this trunnion, you'll see it kind of rotating around, you know, to adjust camber. It's a little stiff because of that other one there. Get that lubricant, there we go, see. I've got anti-seize all over my camera now. So that should just go right the way through. So that's my oversight, that is. To test to make sure the caster plate is working, what you can do to make sure it's engaging properly, just get the little punch and move the wheels around, and you will see this travelling back and forth along the shaft. So then you know that that notch is engaged in those slots I showed you, and then that's why. So I'm just going to put that central, and obviously the alignment shop, when they get to do this, I'll make sure they're aware of the adjustment, because I don't know whether a lot of modern alignment places are going to know about that. What I'm going to do, here's all the parts. We've got this new collar at the top. We'll just tap that guy into position with a soft mallet. That will go on there. I'll do that. And these are the series of 3 per side of spacers. Now I think what came out of here was a 2.2, so 1.95, 1.95, 2.3, 2.3, 2.7, 2.7. Okay, so I'm going to use the I'm going to start with the middle ones, these guys. This is the closest to what that actually came out of the shaft before. First things first, let's get this lower control arm on this side. Again, making sure this is aligned properly, obviously. So now in the book it does require these bolts to come in from the top side. I've seen them done both ways. I don't know that it really makes too much of a difference. Maybe for when you're taking it out, maybe, you know, that the A arm will be in the way of the bolt coming this way. That's what I would suspect. Basically you want to center this trunnion right there. I'm going to put a little grease on here, and then there's a seal on this side, seal on this side. There are no washers on this one. And then we've got the nut on this. We are feeding from the back side. This is from the coming in from the rear. Manual says to install that, because there could be some binding otherwise on full lock, which this car did have actually, so I think it was installed wrong before. Make sure we stay centralized with the trunnion while we're setting this seal in, because what happens is seal is pushing it too far this way, and then once you start the thread, then this thing's going to be off center, so we have to stop it from shifting basically. So back that screw out. I'm going to put a wrench in here to act as a spacer. I think this wrench will do it as far as being the correct. Get that slightly started so it holds the seal. Get that in there. Get a wrench in here. This one might be a bit thick. Let me get a thinner wrench. Alright, we've got a slightly thinner wrench here to act as a spacer. Get that on there, that on there. Hope you can see what I'm doing here. Keep that wrench in there to keep that space. Now once the thread's started, you're good, aren't you? But now we can take that out now, you see. Then little guy's going to have to get squeezed in here. It's all very, very easy, as you can see. Let me get a scraper to try and help that in there. Make sure you don't tear it. Try and pull the seal over. Get it in position. It's rolled a little bit. See if we can correct that. Just kind of roll it around a bit. You can see I was trying to keep this trunnion centered, and what was happening was this seal was pushing it too far this way. So if you start the thread, then this is just going to stay too far this way, isn't it? So filling in that space to push it that way, squash this seal until this guy starts, and once this guy starts, then that stays centered. And let me get this seal tidied up. You just got to kind of massage it around, roll it around, make sure it's not pinched, and then we can run the bolt continually through. And they do say enter from the rear, okay, otherwise you can get some binding issues on different steering locks and everything. So that feels really nice. So there we go. Tail of the tape is in that this lines up. That looks alright. Lines up nice. And as I say, I can't imagine putting this together, this Kingpin assembly and knuckle joint and the weight of it, and trying to struggle with these pins. Much better way of doing this by doing it in sections. And I will leave a link to the guy that suggested. He's got a Mercedes channel, does a lot of 190 stuff, very underappreciated guy, old school, and he had this little tip. I didn't see him do it, he just talked about the principles of it, and he was showing on the upper control arm, I think, of a 190, all the same gear though. So let me show you the steering knuckle now. We've just got to assemble this guy. So now all we got to do is put our little shims in here, the one with the slots in, right? Put a bunch of grease all on the pin. I'll grease all this up, and then slide this guy on and torque it down. And I'll torque it down until I'm happy with the play. If I'm still getting a little end play, up and down play, I'll go to a slightly thicker spacer, because you don't, once you torque this down, and if you go too far, be fine if you like driving round roundabouts, but you'll be going round and round in circles. First of all, you install this one with the little locating pin that's inside the body of the knuckle, then this solid spacer above, and obviously this is so the grease can get in between those two spacers. Right, as far as the shims are going, for the compensating shims they're called, we get, this is, we'll put those aside because they're the same as those. That's for the other side. So what we've got one, the thickest one is at 2.7 mil, 2.36, 1.91. Okay, so off camera I fitted the thick one, and I was getting to the whole steering knuckle was locking up too early before you could get to a correct amount of tightness. It was just locking up way too quick. So what I'm going to do, I'll show you. I'm going to put the middle one in, which is close to what came out. Was a 2.3, I believe. This is 2.35. So let's put this one in, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start tightening it up, and we will see if we're happy with the play, etc., and the torque settings. And if I suspect it's going to get too tight on us, and then I'll show you how to remove it and the setup I've got to then take this out again, because obviously this is on a taper, the knuckle's on a taper, and can be a bit tricky to get out without damaging anything. So let me take you over there. Right, so let's undo that guy. That's just finger tight, and it's loose now. Lower that. We're going to put our shim in. That guy goes in there. Bring that guy up. We'll put our plate on there. Whoops. Whoops, daisy. Lost it there. Okay, we'll put our plate on there. Now what I'm going to do this up by, without the torque wrench. I'll get the torque wrench settings, what it's ideally supposed to be at, but we're just going to do this by feel. This has got lots of end play still, so we've got plenty to take up. Still feels good. Got no end play in, so to speak. Now I'm going to stop there, and then I'm going to get my torque wrench on here. I'm going to find the torque settings. It's a digital torque wrench, so you'll see it getting closer and closer to our torque setting, and then we'll see what we're at, because that feels probably still a little bit loose, I would say, but it's all kind of about feel, but also I want to get to the correct torque. So I found the torque that this is supposed to be is 9 MKP. MKP is for meter kilopound, so that's got to be, and that is equivalent of 7.2 foot-pounds, right? So 9 comes to 64 foot-pounds of torque on this puppy, so that's quite a lot. And I'm thinking I'm going to switch before we go. I've got a feeling this is going to stiffen up on us too quickly, so I'm going to the thinner shim, and we'll see what happens, shall we? As I say, let's suppose you need to remove all this. You're not happy with the drag, it's too tight, and you want to re-shim it in a different manner. So obviously you've got to take the Kingpin out again to put new shim in. So if you remember, I made this tool. All this is an old cold chisel, I think, picked out for $4 at a second-hand store. I pointed the end to a real sharp point here, and then I welded this protection plate on, right? So you got a large area to do the blow. Now obviously you don't go smacking on this, because this whole frame's going to be jiggering around, and then you'd have to put it in a vise and all that pain in the butt stuff. So we've got to be able to essentially get a good dead blow on this point, so it transfers the shock straight to this taper and not dissipated throughout elsewhere of the frame. So very simple. All I did, I got this bar. This is a 1-inch square tube. So what we're going to do is lock this guy to the ground. So we send the shock straight down to the ground. We'll bolt that sucker on where the brake goes, you know. Let me get that bolted up. So you can see now we've got this bar in, transferring the shock straight down to the concrete. So it's going to isolate and put all the force onto that knuckle, and it'll break free. Okay, so we've loosened the bolt up, the nut up here, so it doesn't drop away. And get our trusty chisel and a big hammer. There you go. So now we can re-shim. That shim out of there. Right, we're going to the 1.9. Make sure. Yep, okay. This is the finished shim. 52, 55. Just starting to stiffen there. 58. I'm good with that. I think that is fine, because once, when you think about it, once that spring's in, we're going to get some separation here, I think. And also once it's on the car, you know, it's going to loosen up a bit. I'm pretty sure of that. So we are, just double check again. 58, yeah. I'm good with that. Feels good. 58 with the 1.9 shim. There you go. Job done. Yeah, that's getting a little stiff there. I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a smidge off of that shim. Oh well, not a big deal. You can imagine what a pain in the butt this would be if it was on the car, and every time you have to take this off, you have to relieve the spring, wouldn't you? I mean, unless you have some way of locking this spring out. I suppose you could lock it out with the spring compressor on the car and then deal with it, but then you've got to be able to remove this pin so that it'd be banging upwards, wouldn't you? So so let me get our support rod on. So all we've got here, flat piece of steel, bit of PB blaster, 400 grit. Right, that took about 5 minutes. I didn't take quite as much as I thought I was going to take off. I went from 1.93 to 1.89, 4/100ths of a millimetre basically. So just doing circular motion. So that's actually a little thinner than the one on the other side, just by 1/100th of a millimetre. So let's see what we get from that. Yeah, it's still stiffening up us, and it's too early. Well, it's got to come off again, and I'm going to take about, I don't know, 500ths of mil off of that shim again. So just a lot of, you don't have to watch that. I'll come back to you once I've shaved it. I was going to call this quits, but I thought no, tonight I'm going to get it done. So I came back this evening, took this part again, just one more time. I took the shim out, and we went from, I think it was from memory last night, 1.81 down to 1.76 now on that shim. And now I'm going to show you how it's torqued to 55 foot-pounds, same as this side, and very similar drag. And I'm going to show you how I test the drag as well. So I'm very happy with the way they've come out. Greased them, even tapped the tabs over, so they're locked and done. So let me show you. This is why this stand comes in real handy. So let me block those out. Oh, I'm getting a bit weighty now. Okay. Alright, so here's the knuckle, right? And then so we'll get it to that point. Ready? I've got the subframe fairly vertical. See? Okay, so that's that one. Let me show the other side. Alright, now that's the other side. We'll get this up. See, much the same. Near as damn it. I'm just relying on gravity really, just to. So I'm very happy with that. 55 foot-pounds on each side. So let me torque these guys down now. I did have to remove the grease fittings to get the socket on. So let me torque those. These are 129 foot-pounds. All done. Right. So this has been torqued. This has been torqued, but we need to get the pin in. And of course, it's one of those castle ones where you got to get it lined up with the blooming pinhole. This has got to go to 32 foot-pounds. This guy. So let's do that. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed that rather long video. I'm sorry it went on and on, but I wanted to put a lot of detail in it. Just got to now degrease it and wipe my greasy mitts all over it, off of it, and we've got to put the springs in. And so in the next video I'm going to already have made some studs. So the stud that you know, remember I did that spring compressor thing, it got caught up a little bit in this hole, so with studs we can grease this and it'll run smoother through there, so to make it a lot more effective. And so once we've got our springs back in, we're all ready to roll. Get this thing mounted back in my daily driver and get that back on the road. And then, yeah, next thing we've got to repaint that fender. But along with that, we've got to get back in the welding in the 6.3. And then my wife's car has gone kaput, and so she needs a new water pump, a turbocharger. There's an oil leak, and there's a misfire, and it's a 2009, and what a royal pain. So I've got a lot going on, so I'm itching to get back on the 6.3, and I know some of you, I'm sure, are itching to see some more progress on that. Don't worry, it's going to come, and appreciate you all. Please hit like, share, subscribe, and if you've got any comments, please comment below. I mean, mosquitoes out. And I will see you in the next one. Take care, guys. Cheers.